She will kill you. She is a witch. Or didn't you know she is not human? She will hurt you.
Why'd you bring her home? She must be a witch. Be careful.
Welcome to Heritage Story, your #1 folktales channel for amazing stories.
The old woman's weight pressed against Obina's thin back like death itself, her breath rattling in his ear as he climbed the muddy path toward his hut. Behind him, the villagers whispered curses and made protective signs with their hands, their eyes wide with terror. "The witch will kill him before sunrise," someone hissed. "His blood will be on his own hands." Obina's legs trembled, not from fear, but from exhaustion and hunger that had hollowed out his 14-year-old body over months of struggling to feed his dying mother. The old woman had been lying by the riverside where he fished each morning, her body twisted in pain, her eyes pleading for help that no one in the village would give. Everyone knew the stories about her, the rumors that she cursed anyone foolish enough to touch her, that she drank the blood of children and spoke to demons in the night. But when Obina looked into those desperate eyes, he saw only suffering, the same suffering he witnessed every day in his mother's face as the sickness slowly consumed her. Without thinking, without caring about the consequences, he had lifted the old woman onto his back and started walking, even as the other fishermen scattered like frightened birds. Now, as he pushed through the door of his small hut, his mother's weak voice called out from a mat in the corner, asking who he had brought home. If you want to know what happens when kindness meets the supernatural, keep watching, because this story will change everything you thought you knew about helping strangers. "Mama, it is just an old woman who needed help," Obina said, gently lowering his burden onto the only other mat in their tiny home. His mother, Adiz, raised herself on trembling elbows, her once beautiful face now gaunt and shadowed with illness. The old woman lay still, her breathing shallow, her skin covered in strange markings that looked like dried river mud but seemed to pulse with a faint, otherworldly light. Adiz's eyes widened with recognition and fear. "Obina, my son, do you know what you have done?" she whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. "That woman, the villagers say she is cursed, that she brings death to any household that shelters her." Obina knelt beside his mother, taking her cold hand in his. "Mama, you taught me that we help those who suffer, no matter what others say," he replied, his voice steady despite the fear beginning to creep into his heart. "We barely have food for ourselves, but we have shelter, and that is more than she has right now." Adiz looked at her son, tears forming in her eyes, seeing in him the goodness that his father had possessed before death took him 3 years ago. She wanted to protest, to send the old woman away, but she knew her son's heart was pure, and perhaps, she thought with desperate hope, perhaps this act of kindness might bring them the blessing they so desperately needed. Obina spent the rest of the day caring for both women, feeding them the small portion of dried fish and cassava that was meant to last 3 days. The old woman ate slowly, her eyes never leaving Obina's face, studying him with an intensity that made his skin prickle with strange sensations. She said nothing, but her gaze seemed to pierce through him, seeing parts of his soul he didn't know existed. As evening fell, Obina went outside to fetch water from a community well, and immediately the villagers surrounded him, their faces twisted with anger and fear. "You have brought evil into your home, foolish boy," shouted Okoye, the village elder, his walking stick pointing accusingly at Obina's chest. "That woman is Obanj, a spirit child who refuses to stay in the world of the living or the dead. She has cursed 3 families already. Their crops died, their children fell ill, their wells turned to blood." The other villagers nodded vigorously, adding their own stories of mysterious deaths and misfortunes that followed wherever the old woman appeared. Obina stood his ground, his jaw set with determination. "I do not believe in curses," he said quietly, though his hand shook as he filled his water pot. "I believe in helping those who suffer." The crowd parted as he walked back toward his hut, but their whispered prayers to his soul followed him like dark clouds promising a storm. That night, Obina could not sleep, his mind racing with doubts and fears he had not allowed himself to feel during the day. What if the villagers were right? What if he had brought death into his home, condemning his sick mother to an even worse fate? He lay on the hard floor between the 2 women, listening to their breathing in the darkness, the old woman suddenly seeming stronger, deeper, almost rhythmic like ceremonial drums. Around midnight, He heard it, low chanting in a language that seemed older than time itself, words that made the air in the hut vibrate with power. Obinna opened his eyes and saw the old woman sitting up on her mat, her body surrounded by a soft golden glow that illuminated every corner of their small home. The markings on her skin were now bright and moving, swirling like water currents, and her eyes, which had been cloudy and weak, now shone like twin moons. Who are you?" Obinna stammered, his voice barely above a whisper, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might burst from his chest. The old woman smiled, and as she did, her body began to change, growing taller, straighter, younger, until a magnificent spirit stood before him, wrapped in flowing robes that seemed woven from starlight and river foam. "I am Agba," she said, her voice now strong and melodious, filling the hut with power that made the walls tremble. "Guardian of the rivers, protector of the innocent, and judge of human hearts. For 7 generations I have walked among your people in disguise, testing their compassion, searching for one pure heart among the many." The spirit continued, her glowing eyes fixed on Obinna, who remained frozen on the floor, unable to move or speak. "Entire villages have turned me away, beaten me, cursed me, thrown stones at my disguised form. But you, child, you alone showed me kindness when you had nothing to give." Behind her, Obinna's mother had awakened and was watching with wide eyes, her hand over her mouth to stifle a scream. The spirit raised one luminous hand, and the air in the hut began to shimmer with golden particles of light. "For your pure heart, Obinna, I will give you a blessing that your family will remember for generations," Agba declared. "But know this, every great blessing comes with a great price, and your kindness has awakened something that has slept in the dark places of this world for many years." As she spoke, the temperature in the hut suddenly dropped, and from outside came a sound that made Obinna's blood turn to ice, a terrible shriek that echoed across the village, followed by screams of terror from the nearest homes. The spirit's expression changed from benevolence to grim determination. "It has already begun," she whispered. "The dark spirit, Ekwensu, has sensed my blessing upon you, and he is coming to destroy everything you love." Subscribe now, because next chapter reveals a terrible choice Obinna must make, and trust me, you won't see this twist coming. Obinna's mother collapsed back onto her mat, her body convulsing with violent coughs that sprayed blood onto the earthen floor, her condition suddenly worsening as if the dark spirit's presence had accelerated her illness. The spirit Agba knelt beside Adiz, placing a glowing hand on her forehead, and for a moment the coughing stopped, replaced by peaceful breathing that gave Obinna a flicker of hope. "Your mother's sickness is not natural," the spirit said, her voice heavy with ancient sorrow. "It was placed upon her 2 years ago by Ekwensu, the dark spirit who feeds on human suffering. He has been preparing this village for harvest, weakening the strongest hearts first, and your mother was his first victim because he sensed a goodness in your family." Obinna felt rage building in his chest, a hot, burning fury that he had never experienced before. "Why?" he demanded, his voice cracking with emotion. "Why would any spirit do such evil? My mother has never harmed anyone. She has worked her fingers to bone caring for others, healing the sick with her herbs, feeding hungry children when their own parents abandoned them." The spirit rose to her full height, and through the walls of the hut, Obinna could see shadows moving, dark shapes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, accompanied by that terrible shrieking that was growing closer. "Ekwensu feeds on despair," Agba explained. "He targets the good first because their fall into darkness produces the richest feast for his hunger. He has been patient, watching your family suffer, waiting for the moment when you would break, when you would curse the gods and turn your heart to hatred. Instead, you showed kindness to a stranger, and that act of pure compassion has given me the power to intervene." The spirit continued, her form beginning to flicker as if she was struggling to maintain her presence in the physical world. Outside, the screaming had intensified, and Obinna could hear Chief Okoye's voice shouting orders to gather the men and arm themselves with whatever weapons they could find. "But Ekwensu is ancient and powerful, and I cannot fight him directly in this realm without destroying the entire village in the process. The battle between spirits of our magnitude would tear the fabric between worlds and consume everything living within 5 miles. Obinna looked at his mother, then at the spirit, understanding beginning to dawn on him like a terrible sunrise. "You said every blessing has a price," he said slowly. "What is the price for saving my village?" Ogben's expression softened with something that looked like regret. "I can give you 2 paths, child of kindness," she said quietly. "The first path, I will heal your mother completely, restoring her to perfect health, giving her many more years of life, but I will have no power left to protect the village from Ekwensu. He will come tonight, and before sunrise, he will have claimed 300 souls, leaving this place a graveyard of emptiness and sorrow." The spirit paused, letting the weight of that choice sink in. "The second path, I will give you a portion of my power, making you my champion, allowing you to fight Ekwensu in my place. If you win, the village will be saved, your mother's curse will be lifted partially, giving her a few more months of life. But the battle will be dangerous, and you might not survive it. If you die, your mother will follow within days, her heart broken by grief." Obinna felt as if the walls were closing in around him, crushing the air from his lungs, making it impossible to think clearly. How could anyone make such a choice? Save his mother, the woman who had given him life, who had sacrificed everything for him, or save the village that had done nothing but whisper cruel rumors and avoid his family in their time of need. His mother's hand suddenly gripped his wrist with surprising strength, her eyes clear and focused despite her illness. "My son, listen to me," Adi said, her voice stronger than it had been in months. "I have lived 43 years, and most of them have been filled with more joy than any woman deserves. You have already given me the greatest gift a mother could ask for, a son whose heart is pure and whose courage is true." Tears streamed down Obinna's face as he shook his head violently. "No, Mama, I cannot lose you. You are all I have left in this world. Without you, I am nothing. I am alone. I am—" She placed a finger gently on his lips, silencing him. "You are everything I hoped you would become," she whispered. "And that is why you must choose the village. Because that is who you are, my beautiful boy. You save others even when they do not deserve saving, even when it costs you everything." The dark shadows outside had now completely surrounded their hut, and the temperature had dropped so low that Obinna could see his breath forming clouds in the air. The spirit Ogben's extended her hand toward Obinna, and in her palm materialized a blade made of pure river water, solid yet flowing, glowing with silver moonlight and humming with power that made the air sing. "If you accept this weapon and my blessing, you will become something between human and spirit, able to walk in both worlds, able to see and fight things that mortals were never meant to face," she said solemnly. "The battle will test not just your strength, but your very soul. Ekwensu will show you visions of your worst fears. He will offer you temptations beyond imagination. He will try to break your mind before he breaks your body." Obinna looked at the blade, then at his mother's encouraging smile, then back at the spirit. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to refuse, to choose his mother, to let the village face its own demons while he saved the only person who had ever truly loved him. But he knew, deep in the core of his being, that if he made that choice, he would spend the rest of his life drowning in regret, unable to live with himself, unable to meet his mother's eyes without seeing disappointment. "I will fight," he said, his voice barely audible but filled with determination that surprised even himself. He reached out and grasped the water blade, feeling its power surge through his arm, into his chest, spreading throughout his entire body like liquid lightning. His vision suddenly expanded, and he could see things that had been invisible before. Threads of golden light connecting all living things, dark tendrils of corruption spreading from house to house like poison, and in the center of the village square, a massive shadow taking form. Ogben's placed both hands on Obinna's shoulders, and her power flowed into him in waves that made his bones ache and his skin burn with cold fire. "You will have until dawn," she instructed. "If Ekwensu is not defeated by the time the sun breaks the horizon, his power will become absolute, and nothing in heaven or earth will be able to stop him from consuming every soul in this village." The transformation was complete, and Obinna felt different, taller, stronger, his senses heightened to supernatural levels where he could hear heartbeats from 100 yards away and smell fear on the wind. His mother reached up and touched his face one last time, her fingers tracing the new markings that had appeared on his skin, similar to the river patterns that adorned the spirit's form. "Come back to me, my son," she whispered, even if only to say goodbye. Obinna kissed her forehead, tasting the salt of both their tears, then turned toward the door. As he stepped outside into the chaos of the village night, the water blade in his hand began to pulse with brilliant light, and from the darkness ahead came Ekwensu's voice, ancient and terrible, promising death and suffering beyond imagination. The dark spirit had been waiting for this moment, preparing for this confrontation, and now it would finally feast. Hit that subscribe button right now, because next chapter is where Obinna faces a demon, and what he discovers about his own father's death will shatter everything he believed about his past. The village square had transformed into a nightmare realm where shadows move with malicious intelligence, and the very air seemed to scream with the voices of tortured spirits. Obinna stood at the edge of the darkness, his water blade casting silver light that pushed back the encroaching evil, revealing glimpses of the massive form taking shape in the center. Ekwensu, the ancient demon of destruction, manifesting as a towering figure made of black smoke and red lightning, with eyes like burning coals and a mouth that seemed to contain an endless void. Around the square, villagers huddled in their homes, too terrified to flee, watching through cracks in their shutters as a 14-year-old boy they had dismissed as worthless prepared to fight a battle that seasoned warriors would refuse. So the river spirit has found herself a champion. Ekwensu's voice boomed, shaking the ground beneath Obinna's feet, causing several huts to collapse under the vibration. A starving child with a toy sword, thinking he can challenge the ancient darkness. How amusing, how pathetic, how perfectly tragic. The demon's laughter was like thunder mixed with screaming, and Obinna had to fight the urge to cover his ears, to run, to abandon this impossible task. But he thought of his mother lying weak in their hut, of the innocent children sleeping in their beds, of all the lives that would be destroyed if he failed, and he forced himself to take a step forward, then another, each movement requiring more courage than he knew he possessed. "I know you, demon," Obinna called out, his voice steadier than he felt, the water blade humming in his grip as if responding to his determination. Obenj Neka told me about you, how you feed on suffering, how you are nothing but a parasite that grows fat on human pain. Ekwensu's form rippled with what might have been amusement or anger. It was impossible to tell with such a creature. "Oh, she told you about me, did she?" The demon responded, its voice dripping with mock surprise. "But did she tell you about your father, boy? Did she explain how he died, really died, not the pleasant lie your mother has been feeding you for 3 years?" Obinna felt his heart skip a beat, his grip on the water blade loosening slightly. His father had drowned in the river during a fishing accident. Everyone knew that story. It was a simple tragedy, nothing more. Do not listen to him. Obenj Neka's voice echoed in Obinna's mind, the spirit still connected to him through the blessing she had granted. He will use lies mixed with truth to break your concentration, to make you doubt, to create openings in your defense. But the demon was already continuing, his words worming their way into Obinna's consciousness like poisoned hooks. "Your father, Chukwudi, was a good man, too good for this miserable village," Ekwensu said, his tone becoming almost conversational. "He discovered my presence here, felt the corruption I was spreading, and he came to the river to perform a ritual that would have banished me forever. I met him there, in the deep water where the currents are strongest, and I offered him the same choice I now offer you," the demon continued, and suddenly the air around him filled with images, ghostly projections showing Obinna's father standing waist-deep in the river, his face drawn with determination and fear. "I told him I would leave the village alone, would release my curse on his wife. Yes, boy, I had already marked your mother for death even then, if he would simply walk away, forget what he knew, let me continue my slow feast undisturbed." In the vision, Obinna watched his father shake his head, raise his hand to begin the banishing ritual, and then Ekwensu's shadow rose from the water like a tidal wave, crashing down on Chukwudi, pulling him under, drowning him while making it look like an accident to anyone who might investigate. Obinna's vision blurred with tears, rage building in his chest like a wildfire consuming dry grass. "You killed him," he whispered, then shouted, "You murdered my father because he tried to stop you." The water blade in his hand flared with brilliant light, responding to his emotional state, and without thinking, Obinna charged forward, swinging the weapon with all his strength at the demon's form. But Ekwensu was ancient and cunning, and the blade passed harmlessly through his shadowy body, the demon's laughter echoing across the square. "So predictable," Ekwensu mocked. "Anger makes you weak, boy. It makes you stupid, reckless, easy to destroy." Dark tendrils shot from Ekwensu's form like striking snakes, wrapping around Obinna's arms and legs, lifting him off the ground and squeezing with crushing pressure that made his bones creak and his vision fill with stars of pain. The water blade slipped from his grasp, falling to the ground where it dimmed and began to evaporate like morning dew. "Did you really think a child could defeat me?" the demon whispered, bringing Obina's face close to his burning eyes. "I have ended civilizations, consumed entire kingdoms, fed on the despair of thousands. You are nothing but a momentary inconvenience, a brief amusement before I finish my feast and move on to the next village." The pain was unbearable, and Obina could feel his consciousness beginning to slip away, darkness creeping in from the edges of his vision. He thought of his mother, imagined her disappointment when she learned of his failure, pictured the village being destroyed because he had not been strong enough, not been worthy of the spirit's blessing. But then, through the haze of pain, he heard other voices, the villagers who had watched him carry the old woman home, who had whispered cruel things but had secretly been moved by his compassion. "Fight! Boy!" someone called from a nearby hut. "Do not let the demon win." More voices joined in, creating a chorus of encouragement that gave Obina a spark of renewed determination. He remembered what Ogbenjneka had said. The blade was made of river water, and water could not be destroyed, only change in form. Focusing all his remaining will, Obina called out to the blade with his mind, feeling the connection between them strengthen, and the weapon responded, reforming in his hand even as the demon's tendrils held him suspended in the air. "Anger made me weak," Obina gasped through the pain, "but love makes me strong." He thrust the water blade upward, piercing the center of Ekwensu's shadowy form, and poured into it all his love for his mother, his grief for his father, his compassion for the strangers he had helped, his hope for a better future. The demon shrieked, a sound so terrible that windows shattered throughout the village, and his grip on Obina loosened, dropping the boy to the ground where he landed hard but rolled to his feet with newfound agility. The blade was now burning with golden light, transformed by the purity of Obina's emotions, and where it had pierced Ekwensu's form, cracks of brilliant radiance were spreading like veins through dark stone. "Impossible!" the demon roared, his confidence faltering for the first time. "No mortal has ever." But his words were cut off as Obina charged again, this time not with blind rage but with focused purpose, striking again and again at the weak points revealed by those spreading cracks of light. Each blow caused the demon to shrink slightly, to become less solid, and dawn was still an hour away. Yet as Obina pressed his advantage, he felt something wrong. His mother's presence in his mind, the faint connection that had always existed between them, suddenly grew weaker, as if she was fading, dying faster than before. Drop a like if you're as terrified as I am, because next chapter reveals the true cost of this battle, and Obina's choice will haunt you for days. Obina felt his mother's life force draining away with each strike against Ekwensu, as if the battle itself was accelerating her death, drawing energy from her weakened body to fuel his supernatural abilities. The demon sensed his distraction and exploited it immediately, sending a wave of dark energy that slammed Obina backward into a wall of the village chief's compound, cracking the mud bricks and driving the air from his lungs. "Did you think there would be no consequences, boy?" Ekwensu hissed, his form reconstituting itself, the cracks of light sealing over as he drew power from the fear radiating from every home in the village. "Every second you fight me, every ounce of spirit energy you use, it is being drawn from your mother's remaining life. This is a true price the river spirit did not fully explain. The power to fight me comes from blood, from sacrifice, from the one you love most." Obina struggled to his feet, tasting blood in his mouth, feeling bruised ribs grinding with every breath. In his mind, he could see his mother clearly now through their connection, lying on her mat, her breathing becoming more labored, her heart beating irregularly, her time running out faster than he had imagined possible. The spirit of Ogbenjneka's voice came to him, filled with sorrow and regret. "I am sorry, child. I did not lie, but I did not tell you the full truth. To defeat ancient evil requires ancient sacrifice. Your choice has already been made. You can still retreat, return to your mother's side, spend her final hours with her in peace. The village will fall, but you will have that time together." Tears streamed down Obina's face as the weight of that revelation crashed over him like a collapsing mountain. He had thought he was being noble, heroic, saving everyone while accepting the risk to himself. But the real cost was so much higher, so much more cruel than he could have imagined. "Why?" He screamed at the spirit, at the demon, at the uncaring sky above. Why must goodness always require such terrible sacrifice? Why can't helping others ever be simple, ever be clean, ever be without this kind of unbearable cost? Ekwensu laughed, the sound like breaking bones and tearing flesh. Because that is the nature of this world, foolish child, the demon answered, spreading his shadowy arms wide as if to embrace the entire village. Light cannot exist without darkness, life cannot exist without death, and every act of heroism requires someone to pay a price in blood and tears. Your father learned this lesson when he chose the village over his own life, and now you are learning it too. The mention of his father ignited something deep within Obina's soul, not rage this time, but a cold, crystalline determination that settled over him like armor. His father had known the cost and paid it anyway, had looked at the same impossible choice and decided that some things were worth dying for, that protecting the innocent mattered more than his own survival. If Obina retreated now, if he let his mother's sacrifice mean nothing, then his father's death would also be meaningless, just another tragedy in an endless cycle of suffering and loss. My mother would never forgive me if I let this village burn to save her, Obina said quietly, picking up the water blade that had fallen during his collision with the wall. She taught me that we are all connected, that when one person suffers, we all suffer, and that the measure of a soul is not in what it keeps for itself, but in what it gives to others. He turned to face Ekwensu, and the demon saw something in the boy's eyes that made his ancient confidence waver, a light that would not be extinguished, a determination that transcended fear and pain. "So I will finish what my father started," Obina declared, his voice ringing across the square with unexpected power. "I will end you, demon, even if it costs me everything, because that is what it means to be human, to choose love over fear, sacrifice over safety, hope over despair." The water blade began to glow brighter than ever before, fed not by his mother's failing life force now, but by something else, the collective hope of every villager watching through their windows, their silent prayers, their desperate desire for salvation creating a power that even Ogbanj Neka had not anticipated. Ekwensu attacked with renewed fury, sensing that this battle had reached its critical moment. Throwing everything he had at the boy, waves of darkness, lightning strikes of pure malevolence, visions of horror designed to break his mind and will. But Obina stood firm, deflecting attacks with a water blade, dodging others with speed that should not have been possible, pressing forward step by painful step toward the demon's core where his true essence resided. "You cannot win!" Ekwensu roared, his confidence crumbling as he realized that somehow, impossibly, he was being driven back by a 14-year-old boy who should have been crushed in the first 30 seconds of combat. "I am eternal. I am inevitable. I am—" His words cut off as Obina suddenly dropped to his knees, his body convulsing, his connection to his mother flaring with terrible intensity. In his mind, he felt the exact moment her heart stopped beating, the light of her consciousness flickering out like a candle in a storm, leaving behind only silence and emptiness that threatened to swallow him whole. "No," he whispered, the water blade falling from his nerveless fingers. "No, no, no, Mama, please, I am not ready. I need more time. I need to tell you." But she was gone, and the village square filled with Ekwensu's triumphant laughter as the demon's senses opening, his moment of final victory. The dark spirit surged forward, intending to crush Obina while he was paralyzed with grief, to end this annoyance and begin his feast on 300 screaming souls. Yet as Ekwensu's shadow fell over the kneeling boy, something unexpected happened. The villagers emerged from their homes, moving as one, forming a circle around Obina, placing their bodies between him and the demon. Chief Okoye, who had called him foolish, now stood at the front of the group, his old bones trembling but his voice steady as he spoke. "You will not touch this boy who has given everything to save us." The other villagers took up the cry, their collective defiance creating a wall of human courage that even ancient evil had to respect. Ekwensu paused, confused by this development, and in that moment of hesitation, Obina heard his mother's voice one final time, not in his mind but in his heart, where she would live forever. "Finish it, my beautiful son. Make our sacrifice mean something. I love you, I am proud of you, and I will be waiting for you when your time comes. But not today. Today you must live, must survive, must ensure that good triumphs over evil." Obina rose to his feet, his grief transforming into something larger than himself, into purpose that transcended personal loss. And when he picked up a water blade again, it had changed. No longer silver but gold. No longer channeling just river spirit power, but human love, sacrifice, determination, and hope from every person in that circle. "This ends now, demon," Obinna said, and his voice carried the weight of generations, of every person who had ever chosen kindness over cruelty, light over darkness. He charged forward with battle cry that shook the heavens, and the villagers charged with him, their presence giving him strength beyond anything he could have achieved alone. Obinna's blade struck Ekwensu's core with the force of 1,000 righteous hearts beating as one, and the demon's form exploded into fragments of shadow that dissipated like smoke and wind, his centuries of accumulated power scattering across the spiritual realm from which he had emerged. The explosion sent shockwaves through the village, but instead of destruction, it brought transformation. Crops that had been dying suddenly bloomed with new life. The river that had run murky and polluted became crystal clear, and people who had been suffering from mysterious illnesses felt strength returning to their bodies as the demon's lingering corruption was purged from the land. Obinna collapsed to his knees in the center of the square, the water blade dissolving into mist that rose into the pre-dawn sky where stars were beginning to fade, and the golden markings on his skin slowly faded until he looked almost human again, just a tired, heartbroken boy who had lost everything that mattered. The villagers rushed forward to help him, hands reaching out to support him, voices offering gratitude and apologies for their previous cruelty. But Obinna barely heard them, his mind consumed with only one thought. His mother was gone, and he had not been there to hold her hand as she passed. Ogben's Necker materialized beside him, her spirit form now translucent and weak, the battle having drained much of her power despite Obinna bearing the physical burden. "You have done what no mortal has accomplished in 500 years. She said softly, placing an ethereal hand on his shoulder. "You had destroyed an ancient evil and saved not just this village, but prevented Ekwensu from spreading to other communities, sparing thousands of lives you will never meet." "But I could not save the one life that mattered most," Obinna replied bitterly, pulling away from the spirit's touch, feeling anger rising in his chest despite his exhaustion. "You used me, used my mother, turned our love into a weapon and a sacrifice. And for what? So these people who feared and hated us could live while she died alone." The villagers fell silent, shame washing over their faces as they realized the truth of his words. This boy had given everything while they had given nothing but suspicion and cruelty. Ogben's Necker's expression showed deep regret, but also something else, something that looked almost like hope. "I cannot bring your mother back. The boundary between life and death is absolute, even for spirits of my power," she said carefully. "But I can give you one final gift, a moment of grace for your sacrifice." She raised both hands, and the air around Obinna began to shimmer with golden light. "Your mother's spirit has not yet journeyed to the ancestral realm. She waits by the threshold, held there by her love for you, by her need to know that you survived. I can give you until sunrise to speak with her, to say the things left unsaid, to find peace with this ending." Obinna's anger dissolved instantly, replaced by desperate hope. "Truly," he whispered, afraid to believe it, "I can see her again, talk to her one more time." The spirit nodded, and suddenly Adi's form materialized before him, translucent and glowing with soft light, her face young and healthy again, free from the ravages of illness, beautiful as she had been before suffering had marked her features. "Mama!" Obinna cried out, stumbling forward to embrace her. And though she had no physical substance, he could feel her presence, her warmth, her love surrounding him like a protective blanket. "Oh, my son, my brave, beautiful son," Adi said, her voice filled with pride and tenderness as she cupped his face with her ghostly hands. "I watched everything. So how you stood against the darkness, how you chose a village even knowing what it would cost you. You have become more than I ever dreamed possible." Tears flowed freely down Obinna's face as he poured out everything in his heart, his fear during the battle, his regret that he could not save her, his anger at the unfairness of a world that required such terrible sacrifices from those who only wanted to do good. Adiz listened patiently, stroking his hair as she had done when he was a small child frightened by storms. "The world is not fair, my love, but it is also not entirely cruel," she said gently. "Look around you at these people who now understand the value of compassion, who will tell your story to their children and grandchildren, who will remember what one boy with a pure heart accomplished when he chose love over fear. That legacy will ripple forward through time, touching lives in ways we cannot imagine, preventing future tragedies, inspiring future heroes." She paused, her form beginning to flicker as the sun crept closer to the horizon. "And I am not truly leaving you, Obinna. I will be in every sunrise you see, every river that flows, every act of kindness you perform or witness. Death is not the end. It is merely a transformation, a journey to a different shore. The villagers have formed a respectful circle around mother and son, giving them privacy while bearing witness to the sacred moment. And Chief Okoye knelt in the dust, tears streaming down his weathered face. "We failed you both," the old man said, his voice breaking with emotion. "We let fear and superstition close our hearts when we should have opened them. We will not make that mistake again. Your family's sacrifice will not be forgotten or wasted." Other villagers added their voices, making promises to care for Obinna, to share their food and resources, to honor his mother's memory through their actions. A woman named Obiajeli, whose daughter had once been healed by Adi's herbs, stepped forward with particular determination. "I will take Obinna into my home, raise him as my own son, ensure he receives education and opportunity," she declared. "It is the least we can do after the gift he has given us." Obinna looked at these people who were now offering what they should have provided all along, and he felt something soften in his chest. Not forgiveness exactly, not yet, but perhaps a beginning of understanding that people were complicated, that fear made them small but courage could make them grow. His mother smiled at the villagers' promises, her form now almost transparent as dawn approached. "See, my son, already your sacrifice bears fruit. These people have learned compassion through witnessing yours, and they will pass that lesson forward. Your father would be so proud of both of us." "Tell me about him," Obinna said urgently, sensing their time growing short. "Tell me everything, all the things we never had time to discuss before you got sick." And so Adi spent the final precious minutes sharing stories about Chukwudi, how they met during a harvest festival, how he could make her laugh with silly jokes even during hard times, how he used to sing to Obinna when he was a baby and could not sleep, how his final thought before the demon took him had been a prayer that his family would survive and remain good despite the darkness trying to corrupt them. "He knew you would face this trial someday," she revealed. "He saw it in a vision the night before he died. That is why he fought at Quensu alone, hoping to end the threat before it could reach you. But some destinies cannot be avoided. They can only be faced with courage." The first rays of sunlight broke over the eastern hills, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, and Adi's form began to dissolve into particles of light. "I must go now, my love, but remember, I'm always with you. In the kindness you show others, in the compassion that fills your heart, in the strength that carried you through this night. Lie well, my son, lie fully. Make your life a testament to the love that sacrificed itself so you could change this world for the better." Obinna tried to hold on to her, but his hands passed through empty air, and then she was gone, only her last words echoing in his heart. "I love you, I am proud of you, and I will see you again when your time comes, but not for many, many years." Obinna stood alone in the center of the village square as the sun rose fully, bathing everything in warm morning light, and he felt something shift deep within his soul. Grief would remain, certainly, and pain would be his companion for a long time. But underneath those heavy emotions was something else, purpose, determination, and a strange peace that comes from knowing you have done the right thing even when it costs you everything. Obiajeli came forward and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Come, child, let us go home, get you cleaned and fed, and then you can rest. The village will watch over you now as we should have watched over you always." As Obinna followed her through the square, other villagers emerged from their homes, not with suspicion this time, but with respect and gratitude, bowing as he passed, reaching out to touch his hand or shoulder, offering blessings and thanks. Ogben's Necker appeared one final time beside him, now nearly invisible, her task complete and her power exhausted. "You have earned more than my blessing, Obinna. You have earned your place in the stories that will be told for generations. When people speak of true heroes, they will speak of the poor boy who helped an old woman not knowing she was a spirit, who fought a demon to save a village that had scorned him, who chose sacrifice over safety and love over life itself. Your name will become legend, and your legacy will inspire goodness in hearts not yet born." Then she too faded, returning to whatever realm spirits inhabit when their work in the world of humans is done, leaving behind only a sense of benediction and hope. If this story moved you, hit that like button, subscribe for more powerful stories, and share this with someone who needs to be reminded that goodness still exists in this world. because Obina's journey proves that one person's compassion can change everything, and that sometimes the greatest victories come from our deepest losses, and that love, in the end, is always worth the sacrifice.